Welcome! Today we're going to talk about something I've been fascinated with since I was like a little kid. Like my entire life I've been fascinated with Egypt, but more specifically for some reason, Cleopatra. So today we're going to talk about the life of Cleopatra. If you think your family was crazy, wait till you hear this story. So the story of Cleopatra begins in 69 BC. Now it was like there's conflicting. Some stories say she was born in January 69 BC, and that's what I like to believe because I was born in January. So, maybe I was Cleopatra in a past life. Who knows? Or like somebody she was with. I'm saying if there are past lives, I was probably in Egypt. Okay, maybe, possibly. So in 69 BC, Cleopatra was born. Her father's the pharaoh of Alexandria, Egypt, kind of the same thing. So her father's the pharaoh Ptolemy the 12th. Her mother, her mother's Cleopatra. Cleopatra's, you're going to find out there's just a bunch of them. So we don't know if her mother's Cleopatra the 5th or Cleopatra the 6th. Cleopatra the 6th could have been like an older sister, maybe. We don't really know. Or it could have been her mother. There's not too much as far as differentiating between the 5th and the 6th in history. She could have had an older sister that's Cleopatra the 6th. Either way, the Cleo that we're talking about in this story is Cleopatra the 7th. I'm just going to refer to her as Cleo in this story to make it easier for everybody. Cleo was born in sometime in 69 BC. We do know as far as siblings, though, that she had at least one older sister. Her name was Arsinoe the 4th. And she did have two younger brothers. That's Ptolemy the 13th and Ptolemy the 14th. Because, why not, right? At the end of the day, we're just going to, keep using these names because being creative is too difficult. Now, there's not too much known about her early childhood. Obviously she's royalty, so she had a really great education. She spoke so many languages that it's even hard to compromise that somebody can retain that much information. For example, like she spoke Egyptian, she spoke Hebrew, she spoke Ethiopian, she spoke Arabic, she spoke Latin, she spoke her native language, Greek, which we got to talk about for a second, right? Because Cleopatra in ancient Greek really means glory of the Father. Now, they're from Greece. The Ptolemy dynasty is actually that whole family line is from Greece. So when we talk about ancient Egypt right now, or at least talk about the time that Cleopatra was around, you gotta realize that Egypt didn't look how you might picture it looking back then today in your head. It really looked more like Greece. The architecture was more round, not as much, there's still pyramids, those were around obviously, but it wasn't really what you picture. You would really have to picture more of Greece than you would of what you might picture Egypt being. And by the age of 12, this is when things start to, become awry in her life. So at the age of 12, her father was exiled, and he was exiled because the people didn't like him, and they didn't like him for several reasons. They didn't like him because he was borrowing money from the Romans all the time, way too much, right? So they're like, that's not cool. That's not signs of a great, powerful leader. So no. And also Rome took over Cyprus, and Cyprus was ruled by Ptolemy's brother. And shortly after Rome took over Cyprus, Ptolemy's brother, he killed himself. He's just like, I can't handle this no more. Bam. That's just, not bam, they didn't have guns, but you know what I mean, right? He decided, that was just a common thing back then. They took over your country and you just commit suicide, I guess. The people didn't like that Ptolemy didn't do anything about this. He didn't do anything about, Rome taking over Cyprus, probably because he was borrowing money from them, right? Duh, what the hell are you gonna do? And when his brother offed himself, he didn't do anything about it. His people took this as a sign of weakness. And they didn't like it. They didn't see the country going in a great way, so they exiled him. At the age of 12 in 58 BC, he was exiled, and is thought to believe that she went with him because nobody else in the family went. It was just I don't really know. I know this is what we do know. We do know that he was exiled, and Cleo's older sister, Arsinoe, the fourth, can't forget that, she took over as pharaoh when he was exiled. We do know that she at least stayed behind in Egypt because she was the pharaoh. Duh, I'm not fucking leaving. And he was exiled, and the rest of the younger kids probably ended up going with Ptolemy the 12th. Now, this exile wouldn't last for too long. He ended up getting favor with the Romans and kind of getting an army together and stormed back into Egypt, killing his oldest daughter, who was pharaoh at the time, Arsinoe the fourth. She was gone, not there anymore. He took care of her, his own daughter. That's kind of messed up, I think. But either way, he took over Egypt and became pharaoh again. Now, Ptolemy the 12th would rule until 51 BC. And then he died. And then at the age of 18, Cleo takes over as pharaoh of Egypt. But like her father wanted her to rule with her oldest younger brother, Ptolemy the 13th. So they were technically ruling together, but he was only around 11 at this time. So he was pretty much in the background. He was like a silent pharaoh, where his sister Cleo was, main stage. She was the head of everything, the face of everything. She's what everybody saw. Cleo was pretty much seen as the sole ruler in Alexandria for like a good 2 to 3 years. 2 to 3 years in, Ptolemy the 13th, he had tutors, and he was kind of like, I deserve as much right as she does to be ruling this country and making decisions and stuff. And his tutors were like, yeah, totally, like we're backing you 100%, we agree with you. And that kind of like got to the people too, and the people started to get on Ptolemy the 13th side, and they were kind of trying to push like Cleo out. So like she saw this and decided to flee to Syria for a little bit, because she's like, this is too much going on right now. I need to regroup, and he's going to take over anyway. So before I'm off, my sister was off, I'm going to go, over here to Syria and just like chill for a bit. Cleo flees to Syria, and around this time, a civil war breaks out inside of Rome against Julius Caesar and Pompey. They're going at it. And eventually, Julius Caesar would win this battle, and Pompey would flee to Alexandria, where Cleo's brother was now pharaoh, all by him lonesome. So Julius Caesar was like, yo, I'm going to come get you because you ran away. So he decided he was going to, follow Pompey to Alexandria to, track him down, because, he's got a grudge and he's got to fix that, So what Ptolemy the 13th wanted to do, because he wanted to get on the good side of Caesar, right? Caesar just won this battle. He wanted to impress him, so he knew Pompey was coming. He's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to kill Pompey for Caesar. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to, take care of this for Caesar. And then he delivered like Pompey's head on a silver platter to Caesar. He's like, hey, look what I did. You're welcome. And this didn't really go the way that Ptolemy the 13th was hoping it would. Caesar, he was offended by this. He was like, you killed a Roman at the end of the day. A non-Roman killing a Roman is kind of like, it's not cool, dude. Like, that's not a cool thing to do. This is how, like, mad Caesar was about this. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to take over, like, Alexandria for a little bit, and you just, like, chill over here, and, like, I'm going to figure out what the heck I'm going to do with you guys, because, like, your country's a mess right now. You did something I think is despicable. Your sister ran away. Like, what the hell's going on with you guys, right? So Caesar's like, you know what? I'm in charge for now, and you just need to chill. Well, Caesar was thinking, really, I got to somehow fix this dispute between Ptolemy the 13th and Cleo. Like, this needs to be fixed somehow. That was Caesar's thinking at the time. And here's the issue. Like, he decided they needed to fix this dispute, so he was gonna have a meeting with both Ptolemy the 13th and Cleo at the same time, and like, hey, we're gonna have a mediation and we're gonna talk this out, like that type of thing. And like Cleo was all about meeting Caesar. She's like, awesome, like he won this war, he's like, cool dude, like, I need to get on his good side too. Like no matter who's in charge, they know they need to be on the good side of Caesar because he's in charge of Rome. So, if you're allies with Rome, you're kind of like protected. She was excited about meeting Caesar, but she knew she had to meet him one-on-one. She couldn't do it with her brother because her brother was just going to try to talk Caesar into seeing things Ptolemy's way and like leaving him in charge without her. And she didn't want that interference. In fact, she like decided she needed to meet with Caesar, by herself. But she couldn't just like walk in Alexandria, she fled a few years ago. She can't just be like, hey, I'm back, and somehow get this meeting. So this is where one of the most infamous stories about Cleopatra happens, right? She travels back to Alexandria in like the middle of the night, in like some really small boat, trying not to be seen. And then when she gets there, it's said that she rolled herself up in a rug. It could have been a rug, it could have been like bed sheets, all we know is like a fabric of some type. We don't really know what that fabric was, but for the sake of the story, it was a rug, so she was rolled up in this rug, thrown over somebody's shoulder. This guy walks into the palace of Alexandria, and he goes up to Caesar, flops his rug right on the ground. He's like, yo, you got a delivery. Unrolls his rug, right? And then Cleopatra pops out. Hey, how you doing? It's a crazy story, right? But like, she's a clever lady. Like everything she does with intention, and she thinks all the way through. And that's just going to become more evident as the story goes on. Now, we don't really know what happened in that meeting. We can assume, what happened, if you know what I mean, because after that meeting, Caesar's like, I want, to uphold the will of Cleo and Ptolemy's father. He wanted you guys both to rule. That was his wishes, so, that's what should happen here. That's what I'm ordering. And Cleo's like, yeah, okay, cool, like, at least I'm not exiled anymore, I'm back to Pharaoh of Egypt. But Ptolemy the 13th was like, yeah, I'm gonna go with a no on that one. No thank you, but, thanks for your input. So then this started a civil war between those two, Cleo and Ptolemy the 13th going at it head to head. But Cleo's got Caesar on her side. So this civil, war battle between brother and sister doesn't really last too long. It only lasts like 3 to 4 months because eventually Ptolemy the 13th ends up drowning because his armor was way too heavy to be in the water, I guess. So that was his cause of death. He's not even around anymore, and Cleopatra takes over. Cleo the 7th is now the sole pharaoh and ruler of Alexandria. It was commonplace at that time to have like a co-ruler. So her youngest brother, Ptolemy the 14th, she decides, I'm just going to bring you up and you're going to be co-ruler with me. That's just how it's going to be. Because it was just custom at the time. Shortly after this, Caesar leaves. And so soon after Caesar leaves, Cleo has a baby. And like Mari wasn't around, so it's not like we were playing who's the father. She was trying to make it pretty obvious who the father was because she named her one and only child Caesarion, which means Little Caesar. Pizza, pizza. Like, how can you not say pizza, pizza after Little Caesar? Come on, like that's only natural. So Caesarion was born, so it was pretty much assumed that Caesarion's father was Julius Caesar. Now Cleo would take Caesarion and go visit Caesar in Rome, and on one of these trips to visit Caesar in Rome, this was March 15th, 44 BC, which would become in history known as the Ides of March. And on this day, on March 15th, 44 BC, Julius Caesar was assassinated. Yes, he was stabbed in the back by, you guessed it, his own people. Because, just do it yourself, right? Well, Julius Caesar dies, Cleo and Caesarion head back to Egypt, and shortly after she gets back to Egypt, guess what happens? Yes, her youngest brother, Ptolemy the 14th, mysteriously dies. Yes, very mysterious death. We don't know how he died, what happened. All we know is shortly after she gets back, he gets, not alive anymore, if you know what I mean. At this time, she begins to, associate herself with the Egyptian goddess Isis, to the point she's even like dressing like her. So she's like to the people like, hey, look, I'm the goddess Isis. I'm here. Cleo would like also build like a birth house. I'm guessing that's where like people give birth. I don't really know what a birth house is, but if I had to guess, like, you get birth there. And she had like this whole story with the birth house, how, the birth of a god was like born here, and she like associated this with like, the fact that like she's this goddess Isis, and like this god that was born at this, whatever was, Caesarion. I don't really understand this whole like story she was like contriving with this, but either way, she was putting it like in the people of like Alexandria's head that Caesarion was like special and, was without a doubt the next pharaoh of Alexandria after she's gone. So, like, she was laying the groundwork early, right? Like, she's like, yo, I'm going to leave note down these people's heads that, like, my kid is taking over when, like, I'm not here no more. Because, like, I see what's happening, and people are, like, coming and going, and there's a lot of going on. In 42 BC now, another civil war breaks out in Rome. This time between, like, the assassins of Caesar and Caesar's allies. Which was Mark Antony and Octavian. Octavian was like a nephew of Caesar's, or a grandnephew of Caesar's that he just adopted. It was like his adopted child, I guess. Those are the two main players on the ally side. So when the Civil War broke out between, the assassins and the allies, it was told to Cleo that she needed to pick a side, right? You need to be on, this side, you need to be on that side. But either way, you need to pick a side. And, she was, wanted to be very calculated in this decision, because, like, you make the wrong decision, you lose your entire country, really. So she wanted to make the most calculated decision she could. So she kind of like delayed her answer by like a lot of bit, She would just make excuses like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sick, I can't answer this right now. Or she'd be like, oh, I wanted to go send people out to help, but like the weather was bad, so they couldn't make it. I don't know what to tell you. So she was making excuses for not giving an answer. And eventually, the allies of Caesar won. Mark Antony and Octavian, they beat the assassins. They won. But like Mark Antony's like, yo, I need Cleo to come see me. He summons Cleo. He's like, I need an answer. Like, I told you to pick a side, you didn't pick a side, and I need to know why. Like, I need to know what happened here. She ends up going to visit Mark Antony to give him an answer, but in Cleo fashion, though, she's not just gonna show up, right? She's gonna go like all out. She got like her biggest, fanciest boat, and she's taking this boat to go see him. And then Mark Antony's like, hey, can you get off the boat so we can chat here and then, talk about this? I've got some questions for you. And she's like, you know what? I'm gonna go the no on that. I'm not gonna get off my boat. She's like, if you want to talk to me, you can come onto my boat and talk to me. But like, I'm not gonna get off my boat and come talk to you. No, I came to visit you. Now you come to me. Like, this is how this works. Like, eventually Mark Antony's like, all right, whatever. You're being stubborn. I'm gonna come on your boat. And so he does, and apparently he fell for her like right away. Like, I don't know what it was about Cleopatra. If she was just like super seductive or flirtatious, but she had a thing for like making guys just like fall for her immediately. So he falls for her, and she returns to Rome with Mark Antony. Like, they return together. He would stay there for a little bit, but like eventually he'd got to go back to Rome. The Civil War just ended, and he's got to deal with this, And not even that, it's the fact that, Octavian wants to be the ruler of Rome, but, so does Mark Antony. Octavian's like, yo, I'm Julius Caesar's blood, I should be running this country. But, like, Mark Antony's like, I was Julius Caesar's right-hand man, I was right there, I should be the ruler of this country. They were kind of going at it, and that's going to become a big problem later. So now in 37 BC, Mark Antony summons Cleo to come visit him again. This time, though, it's because he needs her help. He needs support from her with this whole Octavian situation. He needs money, he needs finances, he needs troops, he needs help because, it's not looking good. Cleo goes there and she's like, I hear what you're saying, and I'll tell you what. Cleo's like, I'm going to help you, but I'm going to help you under one condition. One condition, I'm going to help you. And he's like, all right, well, what is this? And she's like, all right, well, I want all the land in the east that my Ptolemy, dynasty once owned. I want all that land back. Mark Antony, he didn't have much of a choice. His back's up against the wall here, so Mark Antony's like, I whatever you say, you want it, you got it, because he needed her help to beat Octavian, so he agreed. And it's like, just like that, Cleopatra just restored Egypt to what it used to be. She just expanded the lands to have, the wealthiest and most dominant lands in the East Mediterranean. She did that in a blink of an eye because she's like, I'm not going to do something for nothing. I need to do something to establish my country and where I'm at and me as a leader. So, she's kicking butt as a pharaoh right now in Egypt. She's just like slaying it. Like in 34 BC, like Mark Antony won like another little war. So battle, it wasn't a war. He won like some little battle. And he came back to Egypt and they held this parade they called like the Donations of Alexandria, where like the royals would dress up as gods and Mark Antony would proclaim that like, hey, we're gonna rule all of the East Mediterranean, we're gonna be like these awesome, great, powerful rulers. But unfortunately, that was gonna be short-lived. It's only 3 years later, in 31 BC, Octavian would come knocking, and this time he wasn't going down. Octavian took over Egypt, he took over Alexandria. And Mark Antony and Cleo, they couldn't take it. It was something that was just too much. It was too overwhelming. So they did what so many other great leaders have done when they were overtaken, and they decided that they needed to commit suicide together. And so Mark Antony decided that he needed to, he decided he was going to fall on his sword. That's the way he was going to die, so that's what he did. And Cleopatra wanted to get bit by an Egyptian cobra, which is like super venomous. She does that, she passes away. But at the age of 39, Cleopatra VII would be the last pharaoh of Egypt. And despite doing all that she could possibly do to save her country, she just couldn't pull it out in the end, which is a shame because she was a smart woman, a clever woman, and she did everything in her power to save her country. But in the end, she would lose it to Octavian. So that, my friends, is the story of Cleopatra VII. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't know what I'm doing next video, but I know it's going to be fun. So I'll see you there. Until next time, take care.